Rudens is a play by Roman author Plautus, thought to have been written around 211 BC. Its name translates from Latin as the rope. It is a comedy, which describes how a girl, Palaestra, stolen from her parents by pirates, is reunited with her father, Daemones, ironically, by means of her pimp, Labrax. The story is, however, far more complex. In particular, humour is derived from the interactions between slaves and masters, and the changes in friendships throughout. The play is set in Cyrene, in northern Africa, although the characters come from a range of cities around the Mediterranean, most notably Athens. The story, Rudens, is introduced by a prologue given by Arcturus before the play properly opens, with a dialogue between Daemones, an elderly Athenian man, and his slave, Skepanio. Skepanio's cheekiness towards his master, who seems to lack the strength to contest this behavior, is the provision of humor from the outset. Shortly after this, a young Athenian man called Plautus appears on stage to seek information politely from Daemones. The interaction between slave and master is shown again, as Skepanio gives Plautus an extremely cold reception, showing his rudeness but also, possibly, his care for Daemones, seemingly protecting him from a stranger. After some argument between Skepanio and Plautus, the latter finally asks Daemones whether he has seen Labrax recently at the Temple of Venus, which is nearby on the coast of Cyrene, Libya. He also describes Labrax as bringing with him two girls, who are later to be named as Palaestra and Palaestra. Suddenly, Daemones is drawn away from the conversation with Plautus, noticing two men, shipwrecked, attempting to swim towards the shore. Plautus immediately leaves with his friends, in the hope that one of them might be Labrax. After he has left, the scene develops, with Skepanio spotting a boat in the turbulent sea, containing two girls. He engages in a detailed commentary of the girls being knocked around on the sea, and then being thrown out. Daemones, however, growing tired of the events, sharply tells Skepanio that, should he wish to dine at his master's expense, he should get back to work. The play shifts, then, to the two girls who were thrown out of the boat into the sea and subsequently separated. It opens with the first girl, Palaestra, lamenting her situation. She first focuses on the fact that she is in an unknown country, and that the gods have punished her unjustly, before being troubled by her loneliness. Indeed, she suggests that her ordeal would be less awful if her companion, Palaestra, were with her. Elsewhere on the coast, Palaestra is similarly upset. However, her reaction is one more resembling absolute despair. She states that she wishes to die, and that she has nothing to live for. Nevertheless, she is driven to continue by the prospect that her friend might be alive. Palaestra's soliloquy is cut short when Palaestra hears a voice. After some consideration and careful listening, the girls realize that they have heard each other's voices, and follow them. Finally, the two girls turn around a rock and meet each other, grasping each other's hands with joy. With nowhere to go, the girls can see only the Temple of Venus in the distance, and so decide to go in that direction. Outside the temple, the girls pray desperately to its god, so loudly, in fact, that the priestess Palaestra is drawn outside. The priestess speaks in a rather pompous tone, asking the girls why they have turned up to the temple so poorly dressed, seemingly disregarding the fact that they have been shipwrecked. However, Palaestra's desperate pleas for mercy and supplication soon soften her spirit, and, after complaining that she has barely enough resources to look after herself, she states that she has a moral duty to do what little she can to help the girls, and accordingly invites them into the temple. The focus shifts to a group of fishermen, singing about the poor lives. Plautus's slave Trashlio enters the scene, confused as to why he cannot find his master, and so asks the fisherman in the most rude way possible. This, again, is an example of the humor induced by a slave's behavior towards a free man. Having stated that they have seen neither Plautus nor Labrax, they leave. Labrax had stated that he would meet Plautus for dinner at the Temple of Venus, and would discuss the girls there. Because neither Labrax nor Plautus can be found, Trashlio comes to the conclusion that his master has been cheated by the pimp, who was actually shipwrecked and so was not able to meet Plautus. Trashlio states that he had predicted this, and comically proclaims that he is a soothsayer. On his way to the temple to seek information from the priestess, Trashlio walks into Palaestra, who is going to a nearby cottage to fetch water. Trashlio states that he recognizes the girl, and Palaestra recognizes him. They enter into a friendly conversation, with Trashlio explaining that his master cannot be found and that Labrax has cheated him. Fueling his ego, Palaestra, too, states that he is a soothsayer, introducing further humor. Palaestra refers to Palaestra being with her, the mention of whom prompts Trashlio to state that she is his master's girl. The conversation continues, as Trashlio obviously, but sweetly, flirts with Palaestra, who, apparently flattered, replies in similar ways. This gives further humor. While Plautus was negotiating the terms of buying Palaestra, Trashlio was forming a relationship with Labrax's other girl and Palaestra's friend, Palaestra. Trashlio's wit is obvious soon after, explaining a rather complex logical argument to explain how Labrax could not have been caught by Plautus. Towards the end of the scene, Palaestra states that Palaestra's misery is being caused by the fact that she has lost a chest in the shipwreck, containing articles which would identify her to her parents should she ever find them again. This becomes extremely important later in the play. Trashlio leaves the scene, entering the temple to speak to Palaestra. Palaestra continues with her task, and knocks on the cottage door to get water. Skepanio, Daemones' slave, answers, and is delighted to see a woman, hardly the behavior of a slave, and thus another source of humor. Indeed, he interrupts her to suggest that it would be more appropriate for her to call again in the evening. He is given an extremely cold reception by Palaestra, who is keen to complete her work. Incredibly, Skepanio then announces that he is the resident priest, and the Dame Pliska must speak to him nicely to get what she wants, an outrageous statement to be made by a slave. Finally, Palaestra, tired of arguing, agrees to do whatever he wants, and so Skepanio scurries away to fill her jug with water. However, after he leaves, Palaestra looks out at the sea and notices, on the shore, two men, whom she instantly realizes as being Labrax and his friend, Charmides. Terrified, she retreats back to the temple to tell Palaestra and to seek safety. Meanwhile, Skepanio is returning with the filled jug, convinced that Palaestra is deeply in love with him. When he does not see her, he presumes that she is playfully hiding, before his mood becomes more sour, until he gets tired of searching. However, worried that he would be in great trouble for leaving the jug, elaborately decorated, unattended, he takes it into the temple himself. Skepanio's delusions about Palaestra loving him would provide humor for an audience which has already seen that she despises him, and is fond of Trashlio anyway. The emphasis shifts to Labrax and Charmides on the shore. They pointlessly argue for some time, blaming one another for the current situation. They suspect that the girls are both dead and that Plautus will not be happy, since he had paid a deposit for Palaestra. The way in which these two friends argue is humorous, and reflects the characters, disloyal. Suddenly, they come across Skepanio, now leaving the temple, and wondering why two women are there, crying. Hearing this, Labrax interrogates Scepanio, realizing that they are Palaestra and Palaestra. His continual questioning annoys Scepanio, who is then cheekily asked by Labrax whether he can provide them with a place to stay. Scepanio does not oblige, but does offer to dry the clothes, an offer which Charmides refuses. The scene ends as Charmides enters the temple to seek shelter. Shortly after, Daemones emerges from his cottage, explaining a dream he had had about being attacked by a monkey, trying to climb a tree to get to a swallow's nest because he did not lend the monkey a ladder, like the audience at this stage. He has no idea what the dream meant. He hears a great noise from inside the temple, and then sees Trashlio running out, exclaiming incomprehensible pleas for help. Trashlio hysterically approaches Daemones, begging for help in the same complex way, but still making no sense to the latter. Finally, he explains that two girls and the priestess are being attacked in the temple. He expands on this, explaining that a man is trying to take the girls, clinging to the altar, away. Being a decent man, Daemones calls upon two strong slaves, Turbilio and Sparax, to go into the temple to help them. Palaestra and Palaestra leave the temple, having been found by the pimp, from whom she thought she was now safe. Palaestra despairs, asking what will become of herself and Palaestra now. Once again, she states that it would be better for them to die. Suddenly, the girls notice Trashlio, giving them some hope. However, despite Trashlio's reassurances, both girls insist that they are intent on suicide. Trashlio tells the girls to wait at the altar outside the temple, where both he and Venus will ensure their safety. Palaestra prays to Venus for this protection, joined by Trashlio, who begs for the goddess to help them both. Daemones then emerges from the temple, along with Turbilio and Sparax, bring Labrax. Another, more violent side of Daemones is seen. He insults Labrax, and instructs one of his slaves to punch him. Nevertheless, Labrax remains defiant, stating that he will have his revenge against Daemones and that the girls are, at least by the law of his own country, his property. However, Trashlio interjects, insisting that if any Cyrenian judge were summoned, he would agree that the girls should be free and that Labrax should spend the rest of his life in prison. Labrax responds harshly to having a slave arguing with him, continuing to speak to Daemones. However, seemingly enjoying the exchange between Trashlio and Labrax, Daemones orders the pimp to continue his argument with the slave. Finally, Labrax is defeated in his resolve and converses with Trashlio, who threatens that even the slightest touch of the girls will result in him being beaten. Greedy as always, Labrax states that Trashlio may have the girls, but only if he is willing to pay, and indeed that Venus could have them if she were to pay. Daemones is outraged at the idea of Venus ever giving money to a pimp, and threatens him with further violence with even the slightest offense against them. Suddenly, Trashlio states that one of the girls is Greek and has Athenian parents, which interests Daemones, realizing that she is of the same nationality as him. This brings back the memories of his lost daughter, stating that she was only 3 years old when she was stolen by pirates, and that she would now be as old as Palaestra if she were still alive. Trashlio then suggests that, to determine whether he or Labrax is more honest, they should compare each other's backs for blisters from whipping for crimes. He believes that Labrax's back will be covered with more blisters than a warship has bolts, and that his will be smooth enough for a bottle maker to execute his art. Labrax takes no notice of the threats, and makes for the cottage, stating that he intends to fetch Vulcan, since he is an enemy of Venus. One of the two slaves makes a humorous comment that there will be no fire in the house since they are allowed to eat nothing but dried figs. This is ignored, and Labrax explains his plan to build a fire with which to kill the girls. However, Daemones suggests that Labrax is burnt instead. Trashlio decides to leave to fetch his master, Plautus, to whom Labrax had sold Palaestra. His exit is slow, as he continually reminds Daemones to watch Labrax carefully. After Trashlio has left, Daemones toys with Labrax, telling him to go and touch the girls. There is humor here, since every time Daemones prompts him, Labrax insists that he intends to make for the girls, but seems too timid to carry it out. This carries on for some time, until Daemones sends one of his slaves, Turbilio, into the cottage to fetch 2 clubs. On his return, Daemones carefully positions both slaves around the pimp, instructing them as to exactly how they should hold the clubs, threatening absolutely that any attempt to touch them whatsoever will result in the death, stressing also that he is not allowed to leave. Daemones then leaves to return to the cottage. Labrax is left alone with the 2 slaves behind him. He jokes about the fact that, although the temple had formerly been Venice's, the presence of the 2 heavy-handed slaves with the clubs makes it seem that it is now Hercules. Having called out to Palaestra, Sparax answers, asking what he wants. Labrax is familiarly rude. Testing the patience, he asks whether he can move closer to the girls, but is threatened with the clubs. The slaves toy with him, encouraging him to move forward. Trashlio returns with his master, Plautus. Despite Trashlio's diligent efforts to protect the girls and his hate for Labrax, he is berated by his master for not having killed the pimp. Quite surprisingly, Trashlio shows significant mercy towards Labrax, appealing at Plautus's suggestion that he should have killed the pimp like a dog. Labrax greets Plautus cheekily, but it is received with contempt. Plautus sends Trashlio to fetch the men who had accompanied him in the first instance, when meeting Daemones and Scepanio, leaving essentially just Plautus and Labrax. Labrax questions Plautus, asking with which crime he is being charged. He then states that he cannot be charged, since he did not actually take the girls away, he just took them some of the way, hindered by the storm. Tired of the banter, Plautus throws a rope around Labrax's neck and orders him to march with him to the magistrate. As they walk past, Labrax's friend, Charmides, emerges from the temple. At Labrax's calls for help, expecting to receive assistance from his friend, Labrax asks him why he is failing to act. Charmides ignores his former friend, and instead congratulates Plautus, and then tells Labrax that he is getting exactly what he deserves. As he is led off, the girls are brought into the safety of Daemones' cottage, and Charmides, in soliloquy, states humorously that he intends to testify at the court. For the prosecution, Daemones emerges from his cottage, again in soliloquy, stating what a good job he has done in saving the 2 girls, and how beautiful he considers the 2 girls in his protection to be. This leads on to his wife, who is now intently watching him, mistrustful of his fidelity. He refers to his slave, Grypus, who is a fisherman whom he sent out the last night to fish. He is late, and Daemones doubts that, given the severity of the storm, he could have caught anything. The scene switches to Grypus, alone, carrying his net behind him. His mood is unusually raised considering that he could not have caught in much. However, he soon states that his net is heavy because of gift from Neptune, and furthermore, that he hasn't caught a single fish. Grypus explains how he has been blessed with his prized catch because of his diligence, and then reveals that what he has caught is a wooden trunk. Because of its weight, he presumes that it is filled with gold, and therefore that he can now buy his freedom. He explains his plans to haggle with Daemones for his freedom, and then to buy land, a house, slaves, and to set up a merchant shipping business. All high aspirations, considering that he does not even know what is in the trunk. However, he obviously gets carried away, believing that he will become famous, owning a yacht, and then that he will found a town called Grypopolis, soon to become the capital of a great empire. He drags off the trunk to hide it when Trashlio calls him. Despite Grypus's assumption that he has come looking for fish, Trashlio insists that he only wishes to speak with him. While carefully examining the contents of the net, Trashlio begins to explain his interest in Grypus's catch. Watling's translation here uses repetition for comic effect. Trashlio asks him, "Promise me you won't break your promise," to which Grypus states that he promised not to break his promise. And finally Trashlio talks about seeing a robber robbing repeatedly. Trashlio explains that he knows the owner of the trunk, and that it should be returned. Grypus takes no notice, arguing that it is his property now. He justifies his cause by using the example of a fish. A fish in the sea cannot belong to anyone, but once it has been caught, it is the property of the fisherman. Trashlio, showing his quick wit, states that if he is correct, the trunk is as much his as it is Grypus's. The argument becomes increasingly obscure as Trashlio demands in which way a trunk can be treated in the same way as a fish, to which Grypus states that there is such thing as a trunk fish. Trashlio becomes sick of the argument, and instead suggests that they seek an arbitrator to make a decision, characteristic of Grypus. He suggests a tug-of-war, an idea much scorned by Trashlio. Humorously, Trashlio threatens to punch Grypus. A similar threat from Grypus makes him back down quickly, offering a 50-50 share of the trunk. A failed attempt by Trashlio to carry off the trunk leads to more argument. Grypus quickly gives up, lacking the wit to keep up with Trashlio. There is a final futile attempt by Grypus to win the trunk by reasoning, suggesting that if Trashlio leaves him with the trunk, he will not be an accessory to the crime. Trashlio finally suggests that the man living in the nearby cottage should act as the arbitrator to himself. Grypus utters that he cannot lose the trunk now, presuming that his master will side with him. The scene moves to the entrance of the cottage, where Daemones has been forced by his jealous wife to let the girls go from the house. Palaestra and Palaestra are despairing once again. Grypus and Trashlio arrive at the cottage and greet Daemones. When, upon hearing that Grypus is Daemones' slave, Trashlio is astounded. However, he speaks politely to Daemones, greeting him, and then, surprisingly, stating how excellent it is that they are master and slave. Grypus and Trashlio enter into a childish race to give the side of the story first, to the audience's surprise. Daemones gives Trashlio the right to speak first. After a brief explanation that the trunk belongs to Labrax, they quarrel again. Daemones appears to be watching the spectacle as a comic event, commenting on the wit of either side and laughing at insults hurled by each of them. Trashlio continues the story by stating that he does not claim anything in the trunk, and that he instead wishes to return an item to Palaestra, a box containing toys from when she was a baby. Instantly, Daemones agrees that he should have the box, despite an appeal from Grypus that they might be gold. However, showing absolute devotion to the girls, he states that he will pay Grypus in gold for whatever he takes from the trunk, despite not having the means. Trashlio then proposes that Palaestra should be made to recognize the box, to make sure that he is correct. Grypus protests again. Daemones asks Trashlio to explain the story again, invoking considerable annoyance, and even more with an interruption from Grypus. Finally, Grypus hands the trunk over to Daemones, on condition that anything not belonging to the girls he can keep. Daemones asks the girls whether the trunk is that in which the box of trinkets was kept. They confirm it, and Grypus, cynical, states that they did not even look at it. Palaestra counters this by telling Daemones to look inside the trunk and box, while she describes all the contents. As Palaestra recognizes the box, she exclaims that her parents are in there, which Grypus comically takes literally, stating that she will be punished for imprisoning her parents in a box. They begin the proof of ownership, as Palaestra describes the toys in the box. The first is a small golden sword with an inscription, Daemones, which she states is her father's name. Daemones begins to realize the truth that Palaestra is his daughter. The next is a small axe with another inscription, Daedalus, the name of Palaestra's mother and of Daemones' wife. The scene erupts into three simultaneous soliloquies, Daemones exclaiming his joy at finding his daughter, Grypus lamenting the loss of the articles in the trunk, Palaestra continuing to describe the items in the box. Finally, this is broken when Daemones states that he is her father, and that her mother is just inside the house. Trashlio congratulates Daemones, and they all, except for Grypus, enter the house. Grypus laments his loss, suggesting that he should just hang himself. The play moves on by a few hours, as Daemones leaves his cottage, talking to himself about his good fortune and his intention to marry his newfound daughter to Plautus. The Storm. In July 2005, a new translation by Peter Oswald entitled The Storm was produced at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London as part of the World and Underworld season. Translations: Henry Thomas Riley, 1912. Paul Nixon, 1916–38. Cleveland K. Chase, 1942. E. F. Watling, 1964. Christopher Stace, 1981. Peter L. Smith, 1991. Robert Wind, 1995. Constance Carrier, 1995. David M. Christensen, 2010.